cup at a time. Yeah, this is tea time. Yeah, making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference. One cup at a time. Tea time. Yeah. Tea time.
Well, welcome to Tea Time. That's right, Miss Liz is here, and it is a Monday, so you know what that means. It means it's a rescheduled tea time. The official day for tea times are on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. But when I do a tea time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's usually a rescheduled tea time, surprise tea time, or a returning guest tea time. So Miss Liz does all of the different kind of teas out there. So tonight I have the amazing Janice Burnette in the house, and she's an author and a former reading specialist. We're going to talk about inspiring children through Bible study, Bible stories. And we're going to get to know a little bit more about Janice and who she is. So before we get started, we're going to get you over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, and we're going to get you to ring that little doorbell, because what does Miss Liz have to offer? Miss Liz has to offer you over 300 different interviews from all walks of life, from all over the world, that you can enjoy. So if one tea time doesn't resonate with you, the next one will, I guarantee you that. So let's get started with the disclaimer and then some bio on Janice, and then we're going to get Janice in here. We're going to spill you a tea of to enable and affirm today. That is the tea that we are serving tonight on Tea Time with Miss Liz. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I will respect those wishes, and we'll see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless it's a surprise tea time, returning tea time, or a rescheduled tea time. So now a little bit on my guest. Well, who is Janice? Well, Janice Burnette. Janice's story is one of dedication, passion, and unwavering commitment to education and community. From a young girl reading by the age of 5 to a seasoned reading specialist, Janice has continued to sprinkle her love for reading and teaching wherever she's gone. Through her unique journey from the mountains of North Carolina to the halls of Western Carolina University, Janice has inspired countless children and adults alike. Her experiences from being a band member to a church organist and even a radio station co-owner are as rich and diverse as many stories she loves to tell. So now let me get Janice in here, and let's find out a little bit more about Janice. So let's get some tea spilling. So you know what to do, guys. Keep sharing these tea times with all of your loved ones. So welcome, Janice.
Glad to be here. Thank you for your time.
So Janice, tell me, who was Janice as a little girl and who is Janice now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was always kind of interested in learning. I was pretty active as a kid, a tomboy, you'd say. I had an older brother who taught me how to play sports, and I've done that all my life. It was a good start with him. He was the one actually taught me to read, because I was 2 years younger. When he came home from first grade, he taught me everything he knew. So that's how I learned to read early. And so I've loved it ever since. And so becoming a reading teacher just kind of fell in line with that.
And I love it, reading teachers, right? Because I find that reading is missing in today's world.
Yeah, I still like that paper in my hand. That's
Right? That hardcover book.
yes.
Well, and you get to see and imagine the illustrations and all of that as well, right? The pictures and images that are shared in books. Uh, so, Janice, let's talk about your books, the Bible stories that inspire children. And how did you come up with that book?
Well, I had written just small stories for my children at school if I couldn't find something they were interested in. This is like first grade level, and I would write something, say about horses or something that they liked that I couldn't find a book for. And then when I had grandchildren, I also wrote small books for them, things about their first day of school or the pets they had, that type of thing, and just gave them something to help them learn to read and enjoy it. Well, this time I needed a story to use with my preschoolers at church. And I couldn't find something that was written on the level that I could present to them in a readable format. But there are lots of Bible stories out there for children, but they have several lines on a page, or it's a complicated story. You can read to them and they could understand it, but it's not something they could read themselves. And so I decided just to write a story from the Bible. And I wrote the story about Jesus calming the storm. And when I presented it to my kids at church, I talked about the pictures first, and they got the gist of the story. And then I let them read it with me. And then I pointed to the words, and they actually read it. And so I thought, wow, it works with kids at church, not just at school. And so I gave each of them a copy and let them take it home with them and read it to their parents or whatever. And I talked to my daughter about it, and she says, you ought to publish some of this stuff. And so that's where it started.
So, how did you get the title Jesus Calming the Storm?
The title? Straight from the Bible. Something that the children could relate to. The cover of my book has a picture of a child reading, and he's picturing a ship. So that was kind of the theme of the book, I guess, because I like to stir a child's imagination, what it would be like to be back in Jesus' time and being on a ship, and what are you going to do if there's a storm? So it was kind of going from there.
So, Janice, I want to take you back to the age of 5. So, what books were you reading at the age of 5? What was your favorite books?
I guess one of my first ones was The Little Red Hen.
Oh, I haven't heard of that book in a long time.
Yes, it was one of the first books I read to my son when I had him too. So I remember that one very vividly. When I was a child, and I don't remember exactly how old, but I'd say 5, 6, 7, along in there, the Belk's store downtown had a bookshelf, and they had all those little golden books there.
Oh, yeah.
And my mom told me that the store owners knew us and that they would let us stand there and read books while she shopped.
Oh.
So
I remember those little books. Those are amazing little books, and they were easy reads.
Mm-hmm. A lot of repetition and, familiar lines, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So as you got older, Janice, and you became a reading teacher, were you like working in the library, or were you doing reading classes? Like how did that work?
I worked in the public schools, and much of my time, about half of my career, I'd say I worked with struggling readers. It was remedial reading or beginning readers who were having trouble. And those were with small groups, say 5 or 6, or with the reading program, it was a very intense one-on-one program. So that was really impressive, that the way that worked and how effective it was. But even when I went in the classroom and taught 30 kids at a time, I could still use some of those reading strategies. And the interesting thing was, some of the children I taught at 5th grade were those I had as first grade struggling readers, and they were now reading on grade level. That was a blessing, just to see that transformation in those years.
So, Janice, you've always worked with like the elementary children?
Elementary, yes.
So ages 4 to 7, correct?
Mostly. I did work with up through 8th grade. And then after retirement, I actually tutored some students in high school, but that was not in reading. It was general math and other subjects.
So I want to ask you about struggling when you're reading. What causes the struggle?
I think a lot of it is background, maybe not being read to as much as other children, because that makes a big difference with a child, is to get them interested in books and knowing what words are and what it looks like on a page, even before you start learning your letters. I think that's one of the biggest things. And the reason I say that is because the children that I worked with at first grade level, once we started into books, it was amazing the progress they made. It's just the exposure and giving them something to work with. The reason I have the word train, the word to enable, I was thinking of training, but then enable, is that as a teacher, it's not just imparting knowledge, it's giving them a basis to keep learning. And so what I tried to do as a reading teacher is not just have them memorize words, but have them to think about what they're reading, predict what will come next, check it, see if it's what it really says, that kind of thing. So they can expand their knowledge and go further with it on their own.
Yeah, because I feel like when you memorize things, are you actually taking it in? Are you actually understanding it? Or are you just memorizing it to repeat it?
Right. I think that's true a lot of times.
So Janice, when you're reading to your grandchildren and your children, what was your most special moment with them? Was it when they said thank you for the story? Was it the beginning of the story? Was it getting comfy for the story? What was it?
One of my favorite times reading to my grandchildren is when my grandson was, I don't know, maybe third grade. I don't remember for sure. But he was reading a book that he had checked out at school, and it was kind of a adventure, disaster, survival kind of story. And I was keeping the kids that weekend while their parents were away on a mission trip. And we stayed up to 2:00 reading that book.
But we ain't telling mom and dad, right?
After a while. But it was a Friday night. We could do it. But we read that book. He read a page, I'd read a page, back and forth, and we just couldn't put it down.
Oh, I think it's really important to read to children. I think it's really important that we get that connection to story time and sharing. And I like that you did that one page at a time, because it was a bonding time as well, right? Connecting time.
Yes. Very much so, yes.
So do you do that as a teacher?
How do you mean, reading to children? Of course.
Like the connection, like when you're reading a story, do you get the student to read one page and then teacher read the next page, or?
Oh, it depends on the situation. When I was doing the one-on-one with first graders, I did not read the book to them. I gave them some basis to start with, and then it was on their end to interpret and work it out. And I would just give them encouragement along the way, kind of thing. But as a classroom teacher, like I spent some of my career in 5th grade, and I would read to my kids every day. We had a novel or something that we were doing, or something that applied to one of our lessons. I'd fill it in with some kind of extra information. But I read to the kids every day, and I loved it. And I think they did too. They responded to the stories.
Well, and I think it opens the imagination as well, right? Getting told stories and getting involved in the story, right?
Oh, yes. And I think back in my school days, my first grade teacher read a book to us that became one of my favorites, of course. And then I can remember my 4th grade teacher reading to us, and the book she read became one of my favorites. So I thought, if that worked for me, it probably worked for other students too. And I hope that they would get into some of the things that I enjoyed, and they'd remember it for a lifetime.
Absolutely. So Janice, now I want to go back to your book, the Bible stories. So how many stories are in your book?
Okay, this book contains 3. They're very short because I wanted them readable, accessible, not too much to put on a child at one time. And they're written specifically for a beginning reader. There's only a few words on a page. The size of the font is large. The spacing is there, so you're not crowding words together. They can separate them easily. The vocabulary is like predictable to some degree, but it's not just words, it's telling a story. So they have to think ahead, what's going to happen in the story, what might happen next. Why did that happen? It's an involvement book, not just factual or whatever. So I just go ahead.
So it's kind of like they decide the outcome of the story.
Excuse me.
So do they decide the outcome of the story?
Oh, well, no, not exactly, but I want them before they turn the page. What do you think?
Oh, okay.
So they're predicting what might be said on the next page. And it kind of gives them an idea of what the words might say, and then they can read what they think it is and then check and see if it really said that by knowing some of their letters and that type of thing.
And you said the font is really big, so it's good for children that have visual impairment and that as well, correct?
Well, and also for young children, it helps them to separate word from word, and it's not just a whole line of letters. So the space between the words is important too.
Oh, I just learned something new.
Mm-hmm.
So spacing the letters helps you read better?
Oh, well, it helps you separate words. That's the big thing. So that they know when they look at the word little, it's different from the word the that came right before it or something. They can recognize, like if they were reading something like the little dog and they said something about, what else starts with D? The little duck. Then they could check and see if that word is right.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
That's a big deal. Mm-hmm.
I always love when I learn something from my guests because there's always room to grow and learn more, So I want to talk a little bit about bedtime stories. Do you feel that it's important to read to your children before they go to sleep?
I always did. Yeah, I read everything from Bible stories to fairy tales to adventures of Little House on the Prairie, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, those were the good ones.
Another reading story about my children, though. I was reading Charlotte's Web to my children when they were small. And my son's 3 years older than my girls. But he was probably about 6, and they were a little bit younger. But they loved the story at the beginning. And when it got to the part where the animals started talking, my son gave up. He says, I don't like that story anymore. It's not real.
Oh.
Yeah, they were really into it until that point.
So do you find by reading stories that it opens up the airway to communicate as well, right? To have that conversation of, what do you think of this character? What do you think of the storyline? Do you ever get into a good conversation when you're reading a story?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think it's more than anything, more than the story, it's a bonding time because that child has your undivided attention. And it's a very positive situation where they have your undivided attention. It's not one they begged for. It's one they get because they're your child. And it's very special to have that time together.
Well, I think bonding time is really important, and I think we need to bring it back. We need more bonding time with our grandchildren and our children, and just getting that conversation going. And that's what tea time is all about, is getting that open discussion going and using words. So the words that you gave me for your tea, Janice, was to enable and affirm. So why those 3 words? You told me why for the to and enable. So why the affirm?
Okay, I was thinking along my teaching lines there, not just life in general, but along my teaching lines. Enable means that you're not, as I say, teaching is not just imparting knowledge, but you enable the child to build on what they know, to expand their learning. And then when they get it, you affirm it and say, yes, that's exactly right. I'll give an example of that. Teaching my first graders, like I say, it was one-on-one, just a single child. I had a child who had a really difficult home situation. And I was told before I taught her, be careful how you touch the child. She's very offended. And so I just sat beside her. I didn't pat her on the back or anything like that, like I might normally do to a child. And I was teaching her one day, and she did something in her reading, and she knew she had done it well. And she jumped up and gave me a hug. I could have cried. That's special.
Well, I think there's so many children out there that are just lacking that bonding time, right?
That's right.
So, as a teacher, can you give me a moment that outstands everything that you taught? Is there one extra special moment in your life of teaching that stands out?
That had to be one right there. Goodness, it's hard to come up with a moment, so to speak. I think one of the blessings is that when you see your children later and they come up to you and say, you made a difference. And because of you, I like to read. Because of you, this, whatever. It's nice to know you made a difference in their life.
I think teachers are really important. And I have a grade 7 teacher who made a huge impact in my life. So I know exactly where you're coming from, Janice, with that. You know, you reach out 20, 30 years later and you say, thank you for remembering me, or thank you for seeing me or understanding me, right? It's deeply important. Um, I want to thank you for your services as a teacher, because teachers don't get enough appreciation. So thank you for that. As you know, teaching in a church, teaching in schools, teachers are really deeply important, and we don't give enough appreciation to teachers. So if anyone out there has a teacher that has left a moment in your heart and made a difference, share that in the comments and share that with Miss Liz. I'd like to know where all the teachers are, and maybe we can give a special shout out to all these incredible teachers out there. So, Janice, I want to get into the other two stories. So, you gave me story one, Jesus calming the storm. So, could you tell me a little bit about the other two stories?
Okay, one of them is about Jesus meeting the woman at the well. And that's kind of a tough story for children, but I wrote it because I had used it with my kids at church fairly recently. And the way I wrote it was the conversation between Jesus and the woman. And he would say something and she'd say, what? If the story, she didn't believe it. And then he'd tell her something else and she'd say, what? And she said a little bit louder. And then when he tells her who he is, she says, what? And in the writing, the words get bigger and bigger as she says it louder and louder. And she drops her pot and runs off to tell everybody. So I tried to make it as child-friendly conversation as I could. But that's one example with a woman at the well. And another one was the story about feeding the 5,000, which is a story that most children really relate to. All of them know what it's like to be hungry. They come in where we are. I didn't have a good breakfast. I want my snack now. And we have to have it certain times. But they can all relate to that. But I used some numbers in that one, like the number 5,000, which would be a new number for small kids to learn. But also when they're counting the loaves of bread and the 2 fish, have those numbers in the book. So things like that actually help the child in other ways other than just words. And another thing I did is at the end of the story, when they have all those baskets left over, I wrote the word, wow, because it's something special. And at the end of the storm, when the storm stopped, I put, awesome. They love that.
It's empowering words, right? And they're really simple, and we don't hear them often.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Janice, do you have the book there with you?
I do.
Could I see it?
Okay. This way. Okay.
There we go. So this is the incredible book that we're talking about tonight on Teatime. So Bible stories for beginning readers. And I just love the image. It can you hold it up a little higher, Janice? The little boy is just reading a book, and it's really simple image on top, and it brings back the bonding time of reading stories. And I love that you put numbers in and shapes in, and some fun in there. So can we get a little sneak peek of a little inside of the book, Janice?
Okay, let's see. Here's an example of a
Oh,
page there where Jesus tells the disciples to go and feed the people, but they have no money and no food. So the words and the pictures supplement each other.
very simple images too. I like it.
And as I said, few words on a page with a large font. And then they spot the boy that has food. He has food. And then here's the page I was telling you about with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loaves of bread. And then get my book in the right place. 1, 2 fish. The one I was telling you about, the Samaritan woman, I called it Jesus Gives Living Water. And here she comes with her water pot. He asks her for a drink of water. She says, "What?" Because if you know the story, most people would not speak to her. It was unusual for a man to speak to her. So she says, "What?" And then he says, "I can give you living water." And she says, "What?" And when he says, "You'll never be thirsty," she says, "What?" again, but she says it even louder. And then when he tells her he's the Messiah,
A big what?
louder and drops her water pot. So the repetition and this gets the child into the story. They kind of feel what she's feeling, like, what? Even more information, what? So that's the idea of the book.
I love it. It's very simple and very easy and playful. It's also educational. I really like the layout of it. Awesome job, Janice.
I enjoy doing it. And the other thing is, I wanted the pictures to be realistic, not cartoon-like characters, because I wanted them to realize that this is from the Bible, that it is a true story. It really happened. It's real people. And so I did not want cartoon characters in my book.
Oh, I like it. It's almost like a elementary school workbook.
Well,
Where you have the, but you come from a teaching background, right? I love the way that the bread and that as you can count the numbers, right? So it's an easy read. It's a playful book, and it shows you how to educate the mind as well as you're reading. Count the breads, count the fish, and I like it. It's playful. I like. We need no more books like that. I'm a grandma, so I'm just loving that book.
Well, even if you were using it to read to the children, I think you could probably enjoy it and have some fun with it and put the expressions in, that type of thing. Like when they're on the ship and it's, in the storm and they're saying, "Jesus, wake up," that kind of thing.
I like the titles. The titles are nice and simple too, and they give a meaning as well, right? Jesus calming the storm. Like there's so much storms in life that it's very simple. I like it. It's really. I had no idea how the book looked, and that I had the cover, guys. So I got to see the inside tonight along with all of you guys out there. So if anybody has any questions or comments that they'd like to share with us, be sure to send them to Miss Liz private DMs or put it in the comment section here. We'd love to hear from you. But Janice, I want to get into music because you learned how to play music at a young age. So let's talk about how important music is as well, because reading and music are two things that are important, and reading notes on the music paper and that as well. So how old were you when you started playing music?
I started at age 9.
Oh, wow.
Took piano lessons. So I began playing at church probably about the time I was in 6th grade, and was playing pretty much. But I remember my music teacher telling me it was like reading. So you're not looking at one note at a time. You're looking at the whole line, and you're looking ahead to see what's coming ahead. So I think about it every time I'm trying to play a new piece of music. I'm trying to look ahead, see what's coming up.
Kind of like a run, right? Like, let's run to the next page.
I'll run here and see what happens.
Right? It's like running the notes. So, how long have you been playing piano? Since the age of 9?
Yeah, I was in third grade, um, and been playing ever since. I took lessons until I was in high school, and my teacher was older and was not able to teach anymore. So I stopped taking lessons, but I've learned a lot more since then, just playing in churches and having, say, choir directors that would give me a piece of music that might not be easy, that I'd work on. So I've grown in my musical abilities, I think, even since taking lessons.
So, have you passed that music talent on to your children and grandchildren?
I would like to hope so. All three of my children were in high school band, so they all play musical instruments. My son also has picked up guitar and plays that more, well, just better than I play piano. He just really does well with guitar. And one of my daughters plays a French horn, the other plays saxophone. My grandson he's starting band now. He's playing trombone. My granddaughter is playing guitar in her church praise band. So I think it kind of goes with it.
I think Janice's family's got their own little music band going on here.
Yes, we've enjoyed doing some music together, but we don't do it often enough together.
So, Janice, I want to talk about church and missionary because you've done a lot of mission work as well.
Yeah.
So, could you share a little bit about that for anybody that might be interested on knowing more about missions and how they work and all that?
Right. I got into this, I guess, even as a child, because we had an organization at our church that was for girls to learn about missions. It was called Girls in Action, and we would do community things to minister to people, like go to nursing homes or go to places where people couldn't get out of their homes to go to church. We'd go to their homes and do things for them. Just various ministries like that, even as a young person. My mother was a nurse, and she worked at a home for mentally handicapped children. And so we got going there and helping children with different projects and working with the patients there. That's when I learned to play accordion, because we would go Christmas caroling and we needed some accompaniment. So my mom bought me an accordion when I was about, I think, 6th grade, along in there. And so I've been playing that since too. But that's mostly when I use that. It's like when we're going outside somewhere and I need that accompaniment to play accordion with the songs. But as far as missions goes, my first really big mission trip, I guess, was to Brazil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd ever been on a plane too. But my husband and I went there in the early 90s, and went to Sao Paulo. It was very, I'd say, eye-opening, but a tense time for me because I'd never been out of the country. I wasn't in a situation before where I didn't speak the language. That was really tough for me to feel comfortable. But we had an interpreter with us most of the time and really made some good friends there. And it really was a blessing. Before we came home, we just talked to each other and said, we've finally done something well with our lives. It just really made that much of an impact. When our children were just ending high school, we decided we wanted to do something with them as a family before they left home and do some kind of trip. So in our church, which is a small church, we probably had 50 people on Sunday morning or something, but we had a good youth team. 3 of the kids were ours, but we had several more. And we put them together and worked on a project, practiced several days, weeks. And we went to South Carolina to Hunting Island and did a day camp for kids at the campground there. That was a really special time to have our whole family working together on that particular trip when they were friends too. Since then, my daughter got her degree in religious education and was able to spend several, summers in South America and China and different places that she's been on mission trips. And so she got me to go to Africa with her. I can't believe now that I actually did that, just the two of us. But she had a friend that was over there and needed some workers to supplement some things they were doing. She said, "We'll go." And she called me and says, "Mom, let's go." And we did. So I have had the opportunity to do that. And with my church, of course, going to Moldova a couple of times.
Oh.
That was very, very sweet time. Learning to speak a little bit of Romanian and even less Russian. But we speak about the music. That's been important to me too, because in Brazil, I learned several songs in Portuguese that I could come back and use when I'm teaching about that with my children. I learned some songs in Romanian that I could use when I was teaching about Europe. So it's been a fun time with language. I took French in high school, but I think I know about as much Romanian and Portuguese as I'm French. But the languages are interesting to me, and I love to sing songs in different languages.
Well, I think it's important to learn all the different cultures and languages as well, right? I think it gives you an understanding of different traditions as well, right? Through the notes and music and reading. Did you learn how to read in different languages as well, Janice?
Some. I'm not fluent in any of them, but I like to explore them. And I know enough to make my children feel like I'm smart.
Oh, well, that's always a good thing, right, Janice?
I know just enough.
So, what age were you when you got your? I'm just looking here. You got your early middle grade education. So, what age were you when you got that?
I was 21. I graduated in 3 years and got that. And then I did a year's internship work at the same time that I got my master's. It was a special, is a program through the university that they offered for teachers who wanted to do that intense work for a year. And we were supervised by the university and did a lot of videos of our classes, and the professors would actually come out to the school and work with us, that type of thing, as an internship for a year. And I got my master's through that.
So, how long does it take to get your master's?
It takes longer now, I think, but I did that within a year.
Oh,
Yeah, it was 1 year of really intense study and research, and we actually used our children that we worked with as our research project.
and how long does it take to become a teacher?
Now, I would say, I think it's still a 4-year degree, but with a master's, it would take longer. And I think most teachers now go ahead and work and then get their master's as they, maybe during the summers.
So they do their summer schooling.
Oh, I did some of that too.
But Janice, I want to talk to you now about the Teachers Corp. What's the Teachers Corp?
Teacher Corps. Teacher Corps was the program I was talking about. That was that intensive master's level program that they did with us and worked with us in the schools. We had special training, like they wanted us to teach a certain way, and we would do that and try it out and see how it worked with our kids. It was kind of an experimental program, but I learned a lot through that about actually how to work with kids and what helps children learn, asking questions instead of telling everything, this kind of thing. It was a very worthwhile program.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you had an amazing time learning a lot, growing a lot. Are you still learning a lot today?
Oh, I'm continually learning. I'm learning that 3-year-olds sometimes make their own rules.
Right? And that,
better to go with the flow than it is to make our rules for them. So just let them kind of lead, but then guide them through what they're wanting to do.
absolutely. So, Janice, I want to get into your 540 broadcasting company. What is that all
about now?
So, when did that start, and how's that going for you?
Okay, my husband worked in broadcasting out of high school. That was what he was interested in, and then went to broadcasting school in Atlanta. Came back and worked here in Bryson City. Then went in the military, And when he was in the military, he was a Marine and was sent to Vietnam. But when he got to Vietnam, they needed someone to work at the American Forces Vietnam Network. So he applied and got his job there at the radio station, TV station there in Da Nang. And that's what his service was while he was in Vietnam, was working in TV and radio. So when he came back home, um, he was invited to come here to Silva to do broadcasting. And so he worked there for several years, and then things changed. He did other things, even pastored churches for a while. We did for about 20 years. But this station went off the air. It's a small town, and the person that owned it didn't think it was worth it to keep it, I guess. So the county commissioners came to Roy and says, would you get it back on the air for us? And so we did. We bit the bullet. So after I retired, this is my retirement job. I keep the books.
So what do you like about the radio?
Oh, it's an interesting thing. I found out a lot about how it works, all about towers and all this electronic stuff. And I helped my husband broadcast ball games. That's
Oh.
kind of interesting. Yeah, we do the high school ball games here in Silva. And so I knew a lot about sports, and I just decided I'd like to do that, and I just go with him.
I like it. Ball games. A good baseball game, right?
A baseball game's good too. I've helped him some on those. He's got another guy that likes to do baseball and football. So if that guy's not there, I go. But most of the time he has somebody, I usually help him with the basketball part.
So, and do you guys play any music on the radio?
Oh, yes. The format here in Silva is like adult contemporary. But we also have the station in Bryson City, the one he started with as a teenager. And we do classic country there.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And then he has special bluegrass and gospel music on weekends. So
anybody wanted to listen to that radio station, what channel is it?
Okay, the one here in Silva is 540 AM or 105.7 FM. The one in Bryson City is 94.1 FM. I've got those numbers down now.
She's got it all down past, right? We want to get those numbers out there because you're talking to a girl of my heart. I'm a classic country girl. I like the old. My favorite artist was Tammy Wynette. So there's no other Tammy out there.
Stand by my man.
Right? Well, that's one of the songs that I grew up on. But as I got older, it was Apartment Number 9 and I Don't Want to Play House and all of those ones, right? Good old storytelling through music.
Oh, that's it. The stories that country music tells. There's some good songs out there that just, you can relate to, and the ones that make you cry.
Absolutely. So who's your favorite, Janice?
Oh, my. I always liked Marty Robbins.
Oh, he's good too.
Yeah. But and we get to represent the station at lots of times, though. I enjoy that part of the job, like at festivals and that kind of thing. And like just last week, they had here in Bryson City what was called the Singing in the Smokies. It's gospel music that people from all over the country come here, and they have it every night over the July the 4th holiday weekend. And we got to represent the station while we were there. So it's interesting to be a part of the community and support different things that go on like that.
I really like the flow of the tea tonight because it's bringing in reading and arts, music and tradition and classic and history all in one, right? And it's making a really beautiful cup of tea here. These are things that we need to start bringing back to the table so that we can understand real storytelling, and understand one another as human beings as well, and have some more compassion for one another. I love that, reading, storytelling, and words, numbers, it all goes together, right? It makes a good pot of tea, if you add one lump of sugar and two creams and the pot, you got 1, 2, 3. So there's a way of bringing in numbers and storytelling as well.
Yes. And the other thing is our stations are in small towns. Sylva and Bryson City, both small towns. And I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
I've visited cities, but I'm always glad to be home. I love the mountains here, and I love the small town feel.
Absolutely. I come from a small northern town. And where I am now, it's a semi-city or community. It's a larger. I come from a small population as well, and the connection through music and family time and bonding. I don't feel that in larger communities. I find it's everybody's hustle and bustle, right? Like rush, rush, rush. Where the smaller communities take in pace, I find a lot more. So.
Yeah, we still garden, that type of thing. So another hobby.
So tell us a little bit about your hobbies, Janice.
Well, we've got the music and the reading and do the gardening. I sometimes like to arrange flowers. Just depends on what I've got in the garden. I always bring in fresh flowers. But we have a vegetable garden with beans and tomatoes and potatoes and corn, all that kind of stuff. Okra this year, we got a bunch coming in. I love to can, put up things, put up vegetables, or freeze them, whichever way. I like to hike the national parks and the state parks and things like this. Whenever we're traveling, I always like to try to find a trail that we can follow. It's always interesting to do that. And the other thing about teaching, I taught about a lot of places, but now that I've retired, I've gotten to see a few of them, and that's kind of nice.
So, Janice, you talked about canning. So, is like canning pickles and meats and stuff like that?
Most of the vegetables, beans and tomatoes, mostly.
I had a guest. I think it was season 3, or maybe it was season 4, and her and her husband created a cookbook, which I have here, and they have some really cool canning recipes in there. So I'll have to send you that, and
That sounds
tea time is done. So connect you guys. You might have some cool recipes to share, right? That's what Miss Liz does. Miss Liz connects her guests.
I did experiment a little bit the past few years and made some things I hadn't done before. Actually made some salsa, turned out pretty good, and some apple butter. Love that.
Oh, apple butter. I haven't had that in years.
Yes, that's one of the things I had as a kid, but now it's kind of fun to make.
Yeah, you're bringing back good memories. My grandma used to make apple butter.
Bet you can smell it too, can't you?
I can almost taste it.
Oh, that, yes. All that cinnamon stuff.
So, Janice, let's get back to the Bible stories before we're almost at the end here. I want to get back to the stories. So if anybody wanted to get that book, where could they purchase this book?
Okay, it is definitely available from the publisher at Westbow Press. It's on Amazon, and it is also at Barnes & Noble. And I was hoping it'd be on the website. I can go ahead and give you that address because it will be up soon. And it's called JaniceBBooks.com.
Let me just get that into the comments here, and I'll get that up so people can check out that website. So Janice
B, the letter B, books.com.
Janice B books.com. I'm going to put it up. Let me know if it's right. If there's anything I need to fix, then I'll fix it. Let me get that up there for everybody. So did I do it right, Janice?
That's correct.
Okay, so let me go in and put the www. All the good stuff for everybody.
It's just
JaniceBBooks.com. Easy website to remember as well.
Well, I've tried to keep it appropriate to what I do. And then I have another book that's already at the publisher and should be coming out pretty soon. It'll be similar to the one I have, other stories about the New Testament. So we'll see what happens with it.
So Janice, I want to get into your favorite color. I asked you what your favorite color was, and you gave me the color blue. Why blue?
I'm getting older. It used to be yellow. When I was younger, I had a yellow bedroom. When I built our house, I put yellow in my kitchen. But I think blue is more of a sedate color that is peaceful. And there's all different shades of it too. And I guess living in silver, you got to have blue because the high school Mustangs are blue.
Absolutely. And I asked you to give me one word to describe yourself, and you gave me creative.
That goes back to the music, and I like to play around with art. I like to make things. I like to dabble with paint. I did the pictures in my book. And well, with music, working with the children at church, a lot of times we will make up words to a song to tell the Bible story, that type of thing. I like doing creative things and getting the kids involved, and it makes it their own. So that's all part of it.
So can you give us a little Bible song that you use?
We did one about Jonah. Let's see how it started. The Lord told Jonah, go and preach. We did it to the tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb, I think. But God told Jonah, go and preach, go and preach, go and preach. God told Jonah, go and preach. He should obey the Lord. And then we said, Jonah ran away from God, like that. Just kept telling the story with each verse.
Oh, I kind of like it. It's so playful. Nursery rhymes and poems and songs and jingles. We need to bring all that stuff back. This is going to take you back to the past and have some fun.
Well, let me tell you something else. When I was teaching school, I made up, kids have trouble, this is 5th grade, with the globe and latitude and longitude. So I made up a song to where is that little dog gone? But I put where is that latitude line? Where can it be? The lines run east and west, measure north and south, that kind of thing. I put that in the words. So they learn latitude and longitude by singing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I learned my 4 directions, north, west, east, and south, from never eat shredded wheats.
Yeah. That are really good to help us.
That's how my grandma would always make sure that we had our shredded wheats. I'd be like, no, never eat shredded wheats. But that's how she taught me how to know north, west, east, and south. She used to tell me, never eat shredded wheats. And then she'd be, here's your bowl of shredded wheats. And I'd be like, no, you said never eat them. So Janice, I noticed here in your bio that you also write poems.
I have written a few, not published, just for family or friends or whatever. I enjoy that too.
So have you ever published any of your poems?
No.
Do you think you ever will?
Probably not. I wrote a poem to my husband when our son was born, and like on Father's Day when the children were born. I wrote a poem for my mom when she was 80 at her 80th birthday, but I put it to the text of the Gettysburg Address, 80 and whatever years ago, that this continent brought forth a woman named Reba, whatever. And I've done things like that with writing a lot. It's fun to play with. I had a pastor who retired, and I wrote a poem for him. He was always very playful with the children, with children's sermons and things like that. And we always teased him about Dr. Seuss. So I wrote his poem in the tone of Dr. Seuss. Ooh. And that was kind of fun. I wrote a poem for our choir director when he retired, and I made that to the Sound of Music. So I build on known things. I'm not creative enough to come up with my own idea, but I like to build off other people's ideas. That's why I won't publish them. It probably wouldn't be legal.
Well, they're personal poems.
They are personal.
So anything in the works for the future, Janice? Any future books that are coming out that you're
Well,
working on?
with Westbow Press, I've contracted for 3. So my second one is at the publishers now and should be coming out within the next month or so. And
Cool.
then I've not decided for sure about the third one. I don't know if I'm going to stay with New Testament or if I'm going to maybe do some Old Testament stories in it. So we'll
That's
see.
really cool. So Janice, what is your favorite scripture in the Bible?
Oh my goodness. I'd have to say my favorite verse is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths.
Wow.
I kind of tried to live by that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Sometimes hearing the word helps a lot. And for my listeners out there that are listening, I hope that you're enjoying tonight's conversation. And be sure to check out Janice's books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and Westbow Publishing, Westbow Press, uh, and that as well. Janice, if anybody would like to reach you, and that you're working with a publicist, correct?
I am.
So could you put that out there, or would you like me just to let everybody go to the website to reach out to you?
Just that website should be up very shortly. That'd be the
Okay.
best.
So what final message do you have for all the listeners tonight, Janice?
Just enjoy reading. And I was thinking if we're going to teach our children to read, I think it's wonderful we can teach them the best book. And that's the other reason I wrote this one, because it needs to be out there.
Well, thank you so much. I really had a pleasure sitting and talking with you tonight and getting to know you a little bit more, and taking me back a little bit of history in that as well, bringing some good memories back. Thank you for that. The apple butter. Oh, Grandma, I wish you were. My grandma passed in November, and I miss her. Bless her heart. But it's those moments, when it's the recipes and the special times. So, Janice, before we wrap up, what special moment would you like to bring into your life this year, for the rest of 2024?
Oh my. That's a tough one, because we just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. That was a big one in this past year. So it's hard to look forward to say what could be. And we also did a trip with all of our kids and family together at one time, and that doesn't happen often because they live in different places. So I think just being together with family again, just everybody together would be great.
Awesome. I really love it. Connection, community, family, and bonding. Let's bring bonding back, you know, and let's start reading to our children. Reading to our children is deeply important, and, encourage reading as well. And do what Janice said at the beginning of the interview is, read one page and the next one read the next. But, 2 a.m., that's a little late.
Good too.
Marissa is not encouraging all the little ones to stay up that late. But if you're with your grandma or your grandpa or your mom and dad and you're reading a story, it's bonding time. So you get away with that one.
We've only done it once, so we're forgiven.
Right? And it was a special time. It's a special moment now. It's like my little granddaughter said to me the other day, I got you wrapped around my little finger, Nanny. And I said, oh, I'm not sure about that one. And she's like, yep. And I was like, oh, maybe she does.
And how old is the granddaughter?
She's 3. So yeah, so she's got her nanny wrapped around her little finger. So but thank you again, Janice, for sitting and talking with me tonight. Thank you to all the listeners out there. I see you guys popping in and out. We have a couple of little glitches here, technology. So Instagram, yes, it was broadcasting, but it got cut off for some reason. I'm not sure. But again, if you guys would like to know more about Miss Liz or anything like that, about any of the tea times, check out Miss Liz's website at www.misslizsteatimes.com, and also go over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel. Give that little bell a ring, and you can watch these tea times at 2 a.m. when you're done reading a book. So we will be back on Thursday at 3 p.m. with Brasha Goetz. She's back, and it's 3 times that she'll She'll be here having tea. So we're going to really be having a strong cup of tea. And our 7 p.m. tea time has been rescheduled until August 5th because of a hurricane that was in Texas. All of my guest safety comes first before an interview. So we have rescheduled that one, so you can see that one in August. And the press release will be released in the next 24 hours for my August lineup. So you can check that all out as well. So until then, I will see everybody on Thursday, same time, same place. And we're going to serve a different cup of tea to you all to enjoy so we can teach educational awareness one cup of tea at a time. So thank you all for joining me tonight.
Thank you.